So kind of the big view of why I'm really interested in this is not only just because it's fun, but also because I feel like it's really imperative for the future generations and for our health of our planet, you know, to be able to move towards more sustainability and beyond sustainability to regenerating the earth. Because, you know, we're dealing with a mass extinction that's going on right now, and just major annihilation of our resources is the way it feels when I look around and see what's happening. From the very beginning, I've had a real interest in ecology and just, you know, doing things in a more thoughtful way. But then throughout life, you need to make a living, and so we built a lot of houses and we remodeled a lot of people's houses and did a lot of construction projects that were, you know, not necessarily sustainable or anything close to that. It was just more traditional building. And now I'd really like to change that focus and spend more time on building regenerative and net zero. They call it net zero because you don't use any energy to heat, cool, or to, you know, collecting rainwater, so you're not utilizing well water or surface water.
On that point, quick question.
Yes.
How does Montana feel about collecting rainwater?
Well, it's not illegal.
Okay, because in
So-
Oregon it is.
Yeah, some states it is.
So,
Colorado.
yeah,
it
you
is.
have the
not
rain
know
barrel
that.
and they see it. EPA come out and slap you with
And-
serious
Wow.
fines.
I know in California, I lived in Northern California for a while, and we actually
same
were
way.
sued.
Yes.
We were in Lake County, but Solano County sued hundreds of thousands of landowners for their surface water rights, because, see, owners don't own, you don't actually own your water. The
own the
water,
water
it's
that
the
falls from
government,
the sky.
the people
Belongs
own
to
the
the
water
state.
supposedly, but it's, yeah.
That's what they say.
So that's definitely an issue. Anytime you work with water, whether it's rainwater, ponds, creeks, if you're in wetlands, there's a lot of regulations.
There is.
And so those are good things to be aware of. So before you go and
So that's why I was wondering
dig
how
a
Montana
6-acre
feels.
pond in your
Yeah.
backyard,
How's the
you
state
might
gonna
want to
feel
look
about
into
that?
that. Yeah. So it's not illegal.
Okay, good.
And the thing is that the health department, I mean, and I have not crossed this bridge yet, but, and here we have a community water system for the subdivision, but the health department has a say, and they regulate and how water systems are put together and all the different things that you have to do to have either a community water system, which is up to, I think, 14 hookups, or a public water system is beyond that. So if you have a subdivision and you're going to hook up a number of houses, and you want to have 20 homes or something, then you'd be in a public system.
All
And
under different regulations.
it's totally different regulations, lots of testing, sampling, so that, and it's a good thing. I mean, we have safe water in the United States. A lot of countries, I mean, those are the main health issues that people deal with in third world countries, is water that's not safe. And so, I mean, we have figured out as a country how to keep our drinking water safe. The thing is that we're using fresh water at an incredible pace, and the Ogallala aquifer in the Midwest is being depleted really rapidly. I mean, we look at what's happening in California with the droughts, and I mean, there's just, the Colorado River doesn't have any water in it when it reaches the ocean.
I really know.
And so, yeah,
It's
there's
down to
definitely issues, and we need to be looking at how to be more conservative. And
Well, and we need to get fluoride out of water too.
Yeah,
So when we say
fluoride's
it's
a whole
safe,
other
that's
issue.
a whole other issue.
Right.
but-
Yeah, it's not necessarily safe. I mean, it depends. But and fluoride's a naturally occurring mineral.
But not
Too.
what they put in the water.
It's not something that we need to be adding to the water. I agree with that. So, anyway,
Sorry for the sidebar.
yeah,
Just
that's,
curious.
well, you know, it's all part, that's the thing that I found, is that all of this stuff is part of the whole picture, you know, and it's not, people like to separate everything, and I think that that's really a part of the problem, is that we segregate everything and separate everything, and like in planning, we do it in everything, and it's science, that's what science
It's
does.
reductionist.
And yeah, it's like, you know, we like to take and say, okay, well, there's vitamin C in here, and so this is, you know, you should eat this for vitamin C, but this has fiber, it's got antioxidants, it's got all kinds of things in it. It's not just vitamin C, you know, and there's other things that are better sources of vitamin C that are, just as amazing or equally amazing. And so I think it's really important to look at things from a whole perspective, and we've gotten away from that. I think people used to, they just observe nature and look at things as a whole, and it's like...
But I think even humans are nature, and I think that's where like the holistic approach is really losing touch. We're losing touch with what we are, and we're a part of nature. We're not destroying nature, we're destroying ourselves.
Yeah, we are
And
nature.
I think so often people
That's true.
separate themselves from the world, and we are holistic, we are all connected.
Right.
That's a really good point.
So anyway, after all that, it's like you boil that down, and I start looking at, well, what's important in life? And really, I've in my own life, I've had kind of like this health journey and moved to a whole food plant-based diet and to try and deal with some of my health issues. And we've really been avoiding GMOs as much as possible, and hopefully altogether, but you never know. And then trying to buy as much organic food as possible. And then that brings you to, well, who's your farmer and where is your food coming from? And, it's like, are these oranges being shipped from where, from Florida or from Central America or I don't know where. Okay, so that's an issue. And so then it's like, well, gardening is really important, and could we raise food here? Could we grow food here? And well, it's really cold a lot of the time. So then it brought me around to this earth bag greenhouse, or let's put a greenhouse up, and then, well, how can you do a greenhouse that's going to be non-energy consuming and not a drain on the environment? It's interesting because a lot of these big greenhouses that are commercial greenhouses, they have huge propane tanks outside. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they use to heat their greenhouses, is they just burn a lot of propane. And I don't know, that must be cost effective because that's what they're doing. But to me, it seems like there's a better way, maybe. And so after a lot of research, and when you sink something in the ground, you're using the constant temperature of the ground to keep your, you have a much higher temperature that you're starting at, because the ground's probably 45 to 50 degrees. And so you're going to be taking a building that's already, going to be when it's really cold out and at 20 below, it's going to freeze in there if you don't provide any heat. But it's going to be a lighter freeze. Maybe 20 below outside, it might be 25 or 30 inside. So that's a big difference. Right. And if you add a couple of supplemental heating systems, then potentially you could eliminate that freeze. Although it depends, you may not want to, because some plants need a freeze in order to produce. And so it just depends on what kind of environment you're trying to achieve. So what I'm trying to do is we eat a lot of greens and
Fiber.
a lot of vegetables, and we just wanted a place to be able to grow those kind of things year round. And
have you thought about perennials? Any kind of...
Perennials are awesome.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of them just out in the yard.
Yeah.
Not all of them, not so much food, but I've been putting more food in the last few years, but it's not big yet. So it's going to take some time.
He wants a foodscape.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I didn't mind tearing up our garden, because, it was, when we put that in, originally it was just to have lots of different flowers and different things in bloom at different times of the year, and so it was more of a aesthetic thing, and then I went to a permaculture conference. And everything changed, and it's like, where's the food, And so now there's some couple pear trees out there, and I put a bunch of Nanking cherry, which is like a shrub that's a cherry, but they're just little whips right now, so they're not, it'll be a while, but that's okay, I'm patient. And, you gotta get the stuff in.
Did you share the principles of permaculture?
Oh, yeah, real quick. So permaculture in a nutshell is to do what's good for the earth and to do what's good for the people and to share the excess. And so I like that. It's really simple. And it makes a lot of sense. So just being thoughtful about those things. So this is a prototype, and you know, I would love, my personal goal, I guess, is to see more of this kind of thing built. And actually, I love the earth ships that the architect Michael Reynolds builds. He uses recycled tires and he burns them into the hill and he rams earth into the tires, and then there's an integrated greenhouse on the south side that then does the heating and cooling. And I spent a lot of time on his websites and looking at his projects, and I bought his book and on rainwater harvesting, because he's got a whole system on harvesting rainwater. And he's a renegade architect and has faced a lot of conflict in his time.
You know about that, don't you?
Barriers.
I spent
Yeah.
some time in Taos with the
So
project.
you worked on his project, on one of his projects.
Well, I was just an apprentice, or an
Yeah.
intern, I guess is the better
Mhm.
word. And it's kind of, he charges $1,000 for you to stay a month, and that's not even food.
Mm.
And then he spends like 5 minutes with you, and for the most part, you're just like free labor.
So I wonder if,
But he's got a school going now,
yeah,
and it's more expensive than that even, and doesn't include food.
but it's important for people to learn.
Yeah, but and it also funds all his projects. I think that's where he makes his money, is off the students in the entrance.
Mhm.
But it does fund a lot of projects across the world. But yeah, it would have been nice to get a little more education out of my $1,000. But
Right.
what can you do?
Well, yeah, education builds, you'll build on what you've learned, and you can
Yeah.
help to contribute to this project and to share what you learned working on his projects.
Well, last year I spent 11 months in Costa Rica on a sustainable education center and permaculture farm.
Oh, neat.
Wow.
But they're like,
Where at in Costa Rica?
Mastatal. It's called Rancho Mastatal.
Which part of the country is that in?
It's right in the mountains,
Central?
southwest of central southwest of San Jose. But
Joe's
they
got a place in Costa Rica.
oh nice. They do natural building permaculture design course. They bring in sustainable summer groups and teach teenagers how to be more sustainable, which is
Oh, that's
kind of
really
like
neat.
talking to a brick wall sometimes. And then so we
Seeds, planting seeds.
yeah, and I went to
Some of them
learn
will turn
about permaculture, and I was extremely interested in agroforestry, but I ended up getting drawn into more food processing, which was wild,
Mm.
because I never thought I would be a cook of any means. But yeah, there's a lot going on right now in this direction, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of resources.
It
It's
seems
pretty amazing.
there is. I mean, I did a ton of research this winter on the internet, and there's an amazing amount of research. You know, things that people are doing out there. I mean, this is nothing new.
Yeah.
I just took all this information and kind of compiled it into something that I thought would work in my backyard.
Yeah, and I think that's what you have to do.
Yeah, and so my goal is, I mean, Diana and I have some property in a partnership that is on the west side of Kalispell that I think would be suited. Hi, welcome. I'm Michael.
Hi Michael, I'm Craig.
Hi, Craig. All right, it's nice to meet
We're
you.
gonna-
Have a seat. And I hope you don't mind Joe is filming.
Oh, that's
so
fine.
You're on
Mainly him.
camera. But,
It's not candid camera though.
yeah. Anyway, I know that, I mean, so my goal would be to incorporate the same greenhouse into a home, you know, because I always wanted to live in a greenhouse. I mean, it's just been a dream of mine. That and maybe a tree house at some point. I haven't found the right property with the right trees, but, so yeah, that's been,
So
save the table.
This is the, what do we want to call this? This is the trial test bed?
Prototype.
So yeah, this is the
Prototype, that's
prototype.
the word. That's the
So,
word.
so we're doing the prototype, and one of the things that I did look at, there's a project that Michael Reynolds did in Billings
Oh.
for the people that own the health food store, and they said that while the heating and cooling system worked okay,
Yeah.
it only got up to about 60 in the winter when it was really cold out. And that wasn't really, for housing, you know, that was a little cold, so they put in a wood stove. And there's a guy in Colorado, Jerome Ostenkowski or something, I don't know if I got the name right, but he has a greenhouse up at 7,000 feet that is like a tropical jungle attached to his house. And he's done this thing called a climate battery, and so they overdig the greenhouse by a couple of feet and then put in drain rock and 4-inch, it's called ADS pipe, it's perforated pipe, or some people call it drain tile, use it for around the perimeter of your foundation. And then run that in a manifold in that drain rock or the rock base, and then you put your soil on top of that. Now he's planting directly in soil, I'm doing aquaponics, so my design's a little bit different, but it's the same concept. So you're taking the heat from the ridge and blowing it with a fan, so it's not passive, it's active, but you're putting that heat then under the floor, and it'll just radiate out all night. And so I think that if Reynolds incorporated a climate battery into the house in a really cold climate, then I think that would probably solve the problem.
Yeah, I think it's got a really good foundation, but again, I think it needs a little bit of tweaking in every environment
Yeah.
they build in.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so.
So can we talk about the dirt bags?
Yeah.
That's different?
Is it the Bible study in Big Fork? Or?
Oh, man.
So the earth bags is, and I contemplated the tires and using those,
It's a lot.
or,
Yeah, I just didn't like the whole concept of tires.
well,
And it's extreme amount of work.
so there was, and this, earth bags are a lot of work too. I mean, you're moving dirt and rocks and stuff, so it's, everything about this type of construction is kind of labor intensive and manual to a large degree. I mean, I rented an excavator to dig the hole most of the way and get the utilities out there. And then I'm gonna rent a skid steer to move drain rock and put a drain tile around, and then we'll put a 3/4 minus material. So they take, at the gravel pit, they take a screen and they screen out anything, all the big boulders, anything bigger than 3 inches they take out, and then they leave in the 3-inch and less. So it's a mix of from sand to pea gravel to all different size
River
rocks.
rocks and stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so it packs in nicely, and it kind of settles out, you know, I mean, you can really make a nice foundation, and that'll be the footings. So instead of a concrete foundation, see, the thing about concrete is it's a great material, and it's been around for a long time, but it's very energy intensive. They have to heat it up, they heat the lime up to incredible temperature, I don't know, it's thousands of degrees, in order to make the cement. And so, and the cement plants are really dirty. So it's not necessarily the cleanest product. And this is not a 100% organic, natural, clean construction process, because we're using poly pipe, we're using, you know, polypropylene sacks that we're going to be putting the dirt in. So it's, you know, I mean, there's going to be products, blue board insulation, which is polystyrene foam. So, you know, it's not 100% perfect, but we're part of
moving in that
nature too.
direction.
And
Yeah.
and we're moving in that direction, and it's got some technology. So what we'll do is we'll do this foundation and compact that with a compactor, and then fill the feed sacks with the soil, and I'm going to get some sand, and we'll mix in some sand, and it creates almost like an adobe. There's quite a bit of clay you'll see in the backyard. I mean, when we were digging it up, it's like you have to shake the bucket to get it to come out. Yeah, and so that's a good thing, because the clay and the sand mixed together creates like an adobe, and then you tamp it. There's these tamp tappers. So you stack the sacks like bricks, and then tamp each course. Between the courses, we'll put 2 strands of barbed wire, and that'll hold them from sliding, so they won't slip on one another. And then as they go up, once we get to the level where we want to run some electrical, then we can run our wires carefully, you know, like stapled in between, so that they don't come in contact with the barbed wire, because you don't want to damage your electrical wires. And then there's a method of,
Are you gonna use any conduit for the wiring, just as an extra layer of protection?
I'm just going to run the Romex right between the sacks.
Okay.
And then what we'll do is we'll cut a piece of plywood or OSB, and then attach like a a strip of wood, like a 2x2, to one edge, and then you put nails in both directions in the plywood, and you put that on your course of dirt bag here, and then you put a dirt bag on top, and you got your wire coming in, and you can attach your electrical box to that piece of wood. So it gives you, or anything, it doesn't have to be an electrical box, it could be anything that we need to attach to the earth bags. So like, you know, that some places we're gonna want shelves. On the outside, we'll run a strip because we're gonna wanna attach the foam. I'm gonna put rigid foam on the outside, we're gonna insulate the outside. So, like straw bales is another construction technique. And straw bales is more suited to above ground than underground. And if you, straw bales are a great insulator, whereas earth bags are a great heat sink, but they're not such a great insulator. So the heat would go into the earth bags and then continue into the soil and out yonder if you don't stop it somewhere. So that's why I'm putting insulation on the outside. Is to stop, to hold that heat in the thermal mass that's inside the greenhouse. So we're going to create an envelope of insulation outside the greenhouse to contain the heat. And
So are you using your earth bag as a berm? And then you're gonna have south-facing windows for your greenhouse?
so, yes, exactly. So let me look at we'll look at this elevation. So
What's your roofing?
So the roofing is polycarbonate. And the windows are some that I have salvaged out of a, we had to change out some windows in an apartment, and so we kept the windows.
You're mostly talking about being able to provide yourself with greens through the winter.
Right.
And that's the function of, you know, with greenhouses here, you just want to create a place where you can get some heat. Or
Maybe a
those
couple
ones-
tomato plants. You
Yeah.
know,
Trying to extend the growing
a few
season.
peppers or something. I don't know. I
Because
mean,
it's such a
Your
short
biggest-
season
and some
around here.
strawberries. I
And
don't
your
know.
biggest issue is going to be light, always.
The biggest issue is light, yeah, and so.
And that's, it doesn't matter how you tilt.
And so supplemental lighting is probably on the agenda. And so one of my concerns,
What do you say?
that's right. Well, LEDs are amazing. They're expensive still, but maybe they'll come down. You know, they're,
They are, as they're becoming more and more prevalent.
Yeah.
Their price is coming down massively.
Right. And solar photovoltaic panels and all of that equipment has been coming down a lot too, which is very exciting. So it's much more reasonable, and the payback is quicker, and it's still a long payback here because electric prices are so cheap. So
No extra charge.
However, it's still a law, federal law on the books that if you create more energy than you use, the energy company must buy it for you.
well, here though, they don't buy excess. They'll do a net
But
meter.
they'll try and mess
but-
you out of it, but they have to buy your excess.
Well, okay, so here's what they do, what the co-op does, and this is what the guy at the co-op said, is that they'll put a net meter, and so when you're producing more than you're using, it runs your meter backwards. At the end of the year, it zeroes out, and they don't pay you for any excess. They don't. So on a 1-year term. So you can use them as a battery, and you have to pay the monthly fee, which I think is $17 or $18 a month.
Something like that.
So
yeah.
that's your cost of using them for storage. And then if you produce more than what you actually consume, then you just lose that. So there's no benefit to producing more than what you'd use on an annual basis. Okay. You know, day to day or week to week, yeah, that's great, because you want to produce it a lot when you're gone to work or whatever, and the sun is up, and we're in the summertime, you know, we have really long days, but, so, that's what I learned, and it may be different with Northwest Energy. I think every utility has a different policy.
Probably.
So you have to really just check it out with each utility company. This plan, okay, so like in the email I sent out, it's got all these different things. We've got the climate battery, we've got the earth bag construction, and then there's some trees that I had to take out, and I'm just gonna use the trees this is a hip roof on the back, 2 rooms. This is gonna be like a root cellar in the back, because we'll have some storage for, you know, our food. And then this is like a seed starting room, but it's also a little equipment room, and there'll be a fish tank, and then there's going to be a sump that will catch the flow out of all these troughs. So the fish water will go into the sump, and then it'll pump it back into the tank. So there will be a pump, and then there's a blower to provide aeration for the fish, because they have to have oxygen, otherwise they'll die. And then and that's another reason why I really would like to have solar panels on the roof, which we're going to probably do later because of the budget restrictions. But I'd like to produce at least enough solar power to power this building. You know, not necessarily the house. If we could do the house, that'd be great, but it's going to be a lot of panels. In terms of sizing, I could do one course of panels across, and I would produce enough electricity to power this
Have
building.
you considered wind turbines?
It's not enough wind here, and there's so many trees.
Actually, the ones I was telling you about only
But here-
require 3 to 10 mile an hour,
Yeah,
and they're only this tall.
yeah, it's really calm here in
They
this.
use almost a turbo design.
Yeah, that's
They're
cool.
about
It's
this
like
big.
a
It's a horizontal
vertical
fin.
shaft with
Yeah, their
the,
fins are this far, and they
Yeah.
put like 20 around the single one, and it doesn't take hardly any wind to move them
Are they
all.
up high in the air?
it's neat to.
No,
Where are they?
you can place them wherever your wind is prevalent, but
Do
they're
they
only
affect-
3 feet
do they
tall.
Do they affect birds?
Totally. No,
Yeah, it's
Because
one
of-
on Earth.
no, because of the way they're designed, they're not these big, huge blades like
Right.
this.
I've seen
It's
some
a
on some people's
cylinder.
roofs.
That's
Yeah.
got fins built into it.
It's
What-
really
what's
neat
the
to
name
look
of it?
at.
I haven't seen it.
Those.
Jay Leno, I read
Jay
about
Leno.
those in Popular Mechanics. He
Okay.
uses those to power his shop.
Oh.
And he uses enough, he creates enough to where it powers his house as
Well,
well.
and like on top of commercial buildings and stuff. I mean, but if some of the issues would be vibration and just make sure that the engineering's okay, because the wind can be pretty powerful. But I think I like them too. And
That design just blew me
Yeah.
away with what it can do in
right,
so little wind. That they look cool, plus they also don't destroy birds. Birds don't fly into them.
oh, they don't go into them.
They don't go into them because the fins are only this far apart.
Right.
So and it's not like this big moving thing that suddenly comes out of the air and hits them.
Yeah.
It's a cylinder that just slowly turns within its own space.
Yeah.
So they fly over the space or
Wow.
actually sit on top of it sometimes.
Oh, that is so
And spin.
awesome.
That's neat.
They're really neat. That's one
Yeah.
of the things that I've discussed about putting in out because we get good wind.
See, and another thing is if you're on a site that has like falling water, hydropower,
hydropower.
micro hydros are really good because they run 24/7. So like on a small, like a 2-inch line would power your whole house and everything. Like you could power a homestead because they produce a lot of electricity.
Yeah, water's
So,
an awesome food.
So those are things to look for sure.
We've been raising koi in our backyard. We tried to mimic nature as much as possible in our backyard so we can
Not
have
the quarter,
a
no.
little bit of a wildlife sanctuary. So we have lots of birds and we have koi, and we love to watch the koi and the birds. You know, it's kind of our little haven when we can't get to Glacier or another place. But we found out that kois can be collector's items. And because we purchase them, we know how expensive they are, and it takes a long time to grow them big. So who knows, we might get into, having excess koi and selling them, but we won't be eating them. So they're kind of an ornamental fish, just like some perennials are ornamental flowers. And I think their affluent will be enough for us to be happy to have them.
This is a cross section, so it's like slicing right through the greenhouse, and this would be south and this would be north. And so like you can see here where our natural grade actually goes slightly down this way. And this is the north side. So ideally it would have gone this way, but it doesn't. So that's why I'm just gonna retain this and then have, we'll put a little dirt on top. This is not a lot of dirt here because I'm putting these big earth tubes on this side that are gonna create a big air cavity, and then that'll come in to the north side of the building. So this is the pantry, and then also a couple up on a shelf up here. And so I'll hopefully be able to fit 8 grain barrels. 55 grain barrels. Yeah. So those will be here, and then
That's good.
it'll replenish the sump because you'll lose water through evaporation and transpiration. So, and as the water is going out, there'll be a little float valve and it'll let more water in. Just a gravity, that's all a gravity system. This is the root cellar, and you step down into it. There's no climate battery under the root cellar because you don't want to heat it. You want it to cool, so you want it to be sunk down into the ground even more. And this is bermed. This has soil on top of the roof. This back section. I'm going to put a skylight in here just for a little natural light. And again, I'm sourcing something like I got the skylight at Habitat. So I mean, I'm trying to get things that we're reusing as much as possible. You've got to buy the polycarbonate. It's like one of the most expensive.
So do you have a system in there that's allowing for circulation through the greenhouse?
Just of air?
Air.
I was just going to put fans.
Okay, well, just whatever it is you do, just have
fans.
That's the most critical issue for growing successfully in a greenhouse. Is being able to move the air in the greenhouse.
Okay.
Because it tends to be stagnant
Right.
and it actually inhibits growth.
Oh, and it gets real muggy.
It's muggy, it actually inhibits mold, I mean, it promotes mold, it promotes bugs, blah, 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 blah. In nature, some of our air movement is essential for plant growth. So it's a thing that we tend to forget when we're building greenhouses. And there's lots of different ways.
Do you think that just having fans
Fans will do it, that's why those big greenhouses have those huge fans.
So do they have to be huge, or
No.
can they be little?
And then there are systems where they use temperature differential to create convection laterally around a building. So you could probably still work that in, you know, it's not complicated.
One of the things that they did a lot down in the desert is in the Quonset huts, they would leave at the very, very roof peak openings.
Oh, yeah.
Because the size of the building and everything itself creates its own heat convection, and the wind blowing through there, you get outside, it's 114 degrees.
Oh, wow.
Step inside the Quonset hut that's got both ends open, it's 80.
It's just nice.
Because the breeze is constantly pulling
Right.
all of the, I mean, you get up in that area and your hair is blowing back.
Huh, in
Because-
Belize, when we went to Belize and you're on the beach, and they say,
Yeah.
well, you know, and the wind is just like this constant breeze.
Yeah. So,
Not overwhelming most of the time,
but
but
it's moving.
it
Sounds
was
like so
nice,
much
yeah.
fun.
And they said
And
just if the
perhaps
wind stops,
something to incorporate an upper level, just opening in the windows for
Well-
your prevalent winds.
I forgot to mention, but there are these roof vents right here
Mhm.
that are just big doors that are gonna open, and I was gonna tie them just controls related on how warm the floor was and what the air temperature was. So if the battery in the floor was fully charged up to a certain temperature, then, and this was still over temperature, that then this would open and then the doors on the air tubes would open.
Yeah.
And then that would draw air in here and then
Right.
out here, and it would just be a natural draw.
Yeah,
Natural
that's
draw, that's the
perfect, that's
best.
lovely.
So you think that'll work?
That should work, and you might need more as well.
But that's gonna go here to here, then
Right.
this leaves this a little
Right.
stagnant.
Right.
So that's where the interior fans
Yeah.
would be
And-
important. Well, because the other thing is pollinators. If
That's
you grow
right.
things and they need to be pollinated, then you want the pollinators to be able to
I'm
get that.
thinking of,
But you could leave the doors open and the windows.
have you been to Peaceful Gardens in Bridgeport?
I have. Isn't that a cool?
It's cool, and in his
Dome?
dome, he ended up putting in, because so that thing is, what is it, 80 feet across?
Oh, I thought it was like 30.
Maybe it's 50 feet across.
It's 50 maybe. Yeah, it's a
Anyway,
big
so it's
dome.
not- but it's not that big. But
Yeah.
at any rate, that is, he had to put in tubes, air circulation. He had to
Oh.
create that because there isn't enough in there that people who built it thought there would be.
Because he had the vents, the triangular
Yes, the
vents.
vents, but he ended up putting
It's
in
not
these
enough.
tubes that he would, I think he put, this is what I might say, have you been there? Because I don't remember.
It was a long time
Kinda
ago, and
making
he
it up.
had just gotten it.
Right, okay, so this was a
Yeah.
year or two into it. Anyways,
Yeah.
I think what he ended up doing is he put these tubes in the dirt that were in those beds that
Yeah,
circumscribed the building
okay.
inside. And they, because they're in the dirt, they get warm. And and then they would, so it'd come out at the other end. So it'd pull cold air from this side of the dome.
Okay.
And then it was a natural convection thing.
But
Sure.
I think I've seen some sort of baffle system, I don't know, cloth or something along ceilings lengthwise or something, and I don't know if that helps direct. I know
Okay.
nothing about it, but
Right.
somehow I have a visual of that.
every site is unique. That's the other thing, is that there is no,
Cut and
although,
dry fashion.
well, Michael Reynolds has come up with a standard design, but then like when talking to Mariah and reading about, you know, ultra cool locations, you know, they require some supplemental, and which is okay, you know. But I think that if we look at that and tweak the design a little bit, maybe we could, you know, take
It's
it
less simple.
What
Less
do they call
so.
them in Big Fork? Peaceful Pines?
peaceful
Peaceful
gardens.
gardens. They, he has the long roof that, where the snow would fall off, for the rain catch system.
Right.
You have a great one here. But they, when we built the mold, we chose to put heat tape in that mold
Oh, right.
so that we could melt snow that we could collect. So I have no idea if this is energetically
To do heat tape.
useful or all that stuff. I'm just saying,
It might be important in the gutter,
there's a
for sure,
resource.
because the gutter,
Might freeze.
sure it will.
So just tracking that snow, you know,
Right.
is an amazing source of water that we tend not to access in the winter.
Right,
Um,
right.
And I'm just thinking, our water, you know, in summer, my thinking about it, we'll always have water in the summer, it's just an old thought in my head because we haven't sort of to access the water supply through the winter snow.
Right.
Any systems that you're creating, that might be useful too.
Plus, if that angle's on the south side, your snow is gonna come there. I don't know what's in front of that.
Well, it freezes, I know that like our gutters on the house will freeze.
Well, I was wondering if you have the solar water heating
Oh.
underneath the roof. If you
Run a
ran
line
the
through
hot
the
one
gutter.
right underneath the gutter, will that heat
Yeah.
be enough to melt the water in the gutter?
Also,
heat tape
on
around
the north berm,
I bet
Michael,
it
you
would.
could have,
That's a good idea.
on the north berm, if you
Uh-huh.
could have some holes percolating down, you could actually somehow get the snow off of that berm into the system.
That's, you know, it's like, it seems interesting to collect rainwater on this site because it's somewhat of a swamp. And there's, so in digging the hole, and we'll go down and look at it, but there's water just
Well, that's
on the ground.
May.
And so I'm not totally concerned about the rainwater, although I'm doing it because it's really cool and also because it's a
prototype.
better water.
Yeah.
Because the water is, it's a
Relatively
better
clean.
pH. It's not so acid. It shouldn't be anyway. It should be more
Unless it's acid
alkaline.
rain.
But
And
also, if this is a prototype that you'd like to be building elsewhere.
elsewhere, then you'll want to
you
do that.
You probably do want to track it somehow.
Right, and so, in this particular greenhouse, there's gonna be a sump that will always have water accessible because there's just groundwater very shallow. And I wouldn't drink it, but that's why we have the well, because it's too shallow to, I mean, it could.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So, so anyway, I like the idea about running a pipe through there. 'Cause
I mean,
think
even
that
if it
would-
just heats it up a few degrees, you'd need less
Right.
power through an E-tape to melt
And you
the
could
rest of
just
it. And
have
it won't freeze that often, as
Yeah.
often as it would otherwise, even if you just heated it up a few degrees.
And you could
with
just have
the-
a valve too that's seasonal that you flip it over in the winter
Mhm.
once it starts coming into that season where you need that. And then it
Run
would
it
run it
through.
through that, at that time of year,
Yeah,
and through PEX, which doesn't usually freeze. I mean, if it freezes, it won't break. You know,
Right.
so you could have one continuous piece.
and then bypass it when you don't need it.
Right, so that's a thought, okay.
Do we have an
Good, thank
outside shower too?
Yeah, put one out in the greenhouse. You ready to go? You wanna take a tour of the site?
Sure. I just have to say something. When we went to Belize, we went to this outdoor, it wasn't a resort, but it was an outdoor hostel for international travelers, and it was all sustainable, and they did permaculture there. There was an outdoor kitchen, an outdoor library, the indoor sleeping cabins with nets, and you
Big
needed the
spiders.
nets. But the showers were rainwater collected during the day, so in the night they were the warmest. In the morning they might be cool. So
But it was
you
amazing 'cause-
decided to go when you wanted to. Composting toilets, it was just
great.
It was one of the only places where you could get a hot shower, I believe. You go to hotels and stuff and it's all cold showers. I mean, they don't have hot water.